modern Formula 1, the cars are faster than ever. The drivers race at over 300 kilometers per hour, separated by just centimeters on circuits surrounded by walls where there's no room for error. And still, they keep pushing to the limit. Because in this sport, everything can change in the blink of an eye. A small miscalculation, braking at the limit, a touch when two cars are wheel to wheel, and in a split second, everything gets out of control. The cars crash into the barriers, parts go flying all over the track, and for a few seconds, no one knows what's going to happen. In the stands, in the pits, and at home, the reaction is always the same. Silence, looks of disbelief, hands on heads, everyone waiting for one thing, for the driver to get out of the car. Because even in an era with every possible safety measure, some accidents are still absolutely chilling. Today we're going to relive it, the most terrifying crash of each current Formula 1 driver, starting with the least brutal all the way to the last one, which caused absolute terror. Liam Lawson suffered the worst crash of his career at the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix. During free practice 3 at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, the driver was trying to improve his time before qualifying when, as he attacked the exit of turn 7, he went too far over the curb and lost control of the car.
After that late fire and he's hit the wall, Liam Lawson.
The side impact against the barriers was brutal. The car was seriously damaged, the front wing came off, and several pieces of the single-seater were scattered across the track. Due to the magnitude of the crash, race control stopped the session with a red flag. After the impact, Lawson reassured everyone by reporting over the radio that he was okay and managed to get out of the car on his own without suffering serious injuries. Despite the damage, the Bull mechanics had very little time to work, but they still managed to repair the car so Lawson could participate in qualifying. However, this is not the only accident at the Marina Bay Circuit that we'll see on this list, and it's certainly not the most terrifying. Arvid Lindblad was involved in the most dangerous accident of his young career during the Formula 2 sprint race at the 2025 Austrian Grand Prix. The crash happened on the second lap at the Red Bull Ring when the pack was still very close together. Several drivers battled for position approaching the heavy braking zone at turn 3 when the following occurred.
At turn 3, there was contact and a car ended up on its roof. Big incident, Arvid Lindblad, and that is one of the Trident cars that has gone over, and a red flag straight away.
After the contact, Samim de Twin Eves' single-seater was violently lifted and ended up going over Lindblad's car. One of the wheels hit the top of the single-seater, very close to the driver's head. Fortunately, the car absorbed the impact and prevented the tire from hitting his cockpit directly. Due to the magnitude of the accident, race control stopped the sprint with a red flag, and the 3 cars involved were out of it. Lindblad stayed in the car for a few seconds, but he finally managed to get out on his own without suffering any injury. However, this would not be the only moment on this list where Lalo would play a key role in saving a driver's life. Charles Leclerc experienced the most terrifying moment of his career during the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix. At the start of the race at Spa-Francorchamps, as they approached the braking zone for the first corner, Nico Hülkenberg locked up the brakes and hit Fernando Alonso's McLaren from behind.
World champion Carlos finished, the cup went to Perez after he lost his brakes, and champion Alonso retired.
Leclerc pulled away. The McLaren was launched into the air and flew over Leclerc's Sauber. During the jump, one of the wheels hit directly on the halo of the Monegasque's car and left visible marks on the device. The moment was terrifying, and without the halo, the wheel would have hit the driver's head directly. Due to the multiple crash at the start, Alonso, Hülkenberg, and Leclerc were out of the race. Fortunately, the young Sauber driver managed to get out of the car without serious injuries. However, this isn't the most chilling accident at Spa-Francorchamps we'll see on this list. But before that, if you're enjoying this video, subscribe. Pierre Gasly suffered the worst crash of his life during the 2019 preseason tests. At the Barcelona Catalunya circuit during his first year with Red Bull, after being promoted from Toro Rosso, the driver was running with the RB15, the team's new car for that season. In one of the fast corners of the last sector, Gasly lost control of the car, and this happened. The Red Bull went straight into the barriers, and it was a very heavy impact. The RB15 suffered significant damage to the front and side of the car, and due to the magnitude of the crash, race control stopped the session with a red flag. The accident was so severe that Red Bull couldn't continue running that day and had to end their test session. Fortunately, Gasly was able to get out of the car unharmed. Isaac Hager suffered the most terrifying accident of his career during the 2025 British Grand Prix. At Silverstone, under heavy rain that kicked up huge clouds of spray, visibility was practically zero. In those conditions, Hager quickly approached Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes, and then you can't see him.
You can't see him. Well, he didn't see him. He didn't see him, like I said, when they all restart together.
I didn't see him. I mean, he showed up again, man. Oh my God.
In the middle of the spray, Hager couldn't see the car in front of him and ended up crashing into the back of Antonelli's Mercedes. He didn't have time to react, so he took a very hard hit that completely destroyed the front of his single-seater. After the incident, race control deployed the safety car to neutralize the race. The damage to the car was too great to continue, so Hager had to retire and his weekend came to an end. Finally, the driver managed to get out of the single-seater without any major consequences. However, this is not the only accident at Silverstone that we will see on this list, nor is it the worst. The most chilling moment in Kimi Antonelli's young career came during the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. In Monza, during Free Practice 1, the Italian was running with Mercedes on the same weekend he was announced as a driver for the team for the following season. In one of the fastest sections of the circuit, Antonelli lost control of the car, and this is what happened next.
Antonelli takes off into the gravel and into the water.
The Mercedes crashed violently into the barriers and left the car with significant damage to the front. Because of this, the session had to be interrupted while the marshals removed the debris from the single-seater. The incident thus marked the end of his participation in that practice and his debut. Finally, Antonelli left the car without any problems. Alex Albon suffered the hardest crash of his career during the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. At the Shanghai International Circuit during Free Practice 3, the Thai driver was in his rookie Formula 1 season with Toro Rosso. A few minutes before the end of the session, Albon went a bit wide at the last corner of the circuit. When he touched the artificial grass off the track, the car completely lost grip, and then...
because of the way this car broke. Look, he's going into the last corner. He loses it over the curb.
The Toro Rosso spun out at high speed and ended up crashing violently into the barriers. The crash was brutal and registered a G-force close to 49 Gs. The single-seater was almost completely destroyed. However, after the impact, the driver reassured the team over the radio and was taken to the medical center for a routine checkup. Due to the crash, the session ended early with a red flag while the marshals removed the remains of the car. The damage was so severe that the team couldn't repair the single-seater in time, which left Albon out of qualifying. Oscar Piastri had the hardest crash of his life during the 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. On the Baku Street Circuit, during Q3, the Australian driver was pushing to the limit in search of pole position. Pole, which was particularly important for him since he came into that weekend in the middle of a championship fight, which increased the pressure even more to get a good starting position. And on a narrow, fast track surrounded by walls, Piastri was trying to squeeze out every thousandth of a second, but his attempt ended like this.
I think this was the worst crash of all. Look where the wheel and the right front suspension ended up. Juan, that's incredible.
The McLaren lost control and ended up crashing hard into the barriers. The impact left the car seriously damaged and immediately put an end to his qualifying attempt. Because of this, the session had to be interrupted while the marshals removed the remains of the car, and despite his frustration, Piastri was able to get out of the car on his own. Franco Colapinto experienced the most dramatic moment of his career during the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. On the Las Vegas street circuit during Q2, the Argentine driver was trying to advance to the next round on one of the fastest tracks in the world. In the middle of his flying lap, Colapinto was pushing to the limit between the circuit walls and was improving his times. But then this happened.
Oh, big crash! And once again, there's the Williams with damage. Franco Colapinto trying to find his way into the top 10.
The Williams lost control and ended up crashing violently into the barriers, first into one, then into another. The crash happened at high speed and left the car badly damaged, with several parts scattered across the track. Because of this, qualifying had to be stopped while the marshals removed the car's debris. Thus, the accident ended his run in the session, and Colapinto managed to get out of the car after the impact. George Russell had the most terrifying accident of his life during the 2024 Australian Grand Prix. On the Albert Park Street circuit, as the race was entering its final laps, the Mercedes driver was fighting for position with Fernando Alonso. Russell was running extremely close to the Aston Martin, trying to pressure him to find an overtaking opportunity until this happened.
Russell crashed, just like it happened to him in another race. Russell makes a mistake and crashes. Look at how the car ended up.
By being so close to the car in front of him, Russell lost control of the Mercedes. The car crashed into the wall, bounced back onto the track, and ended up flipped over in the middle of the circuit. After the accident, the race had to be neutralized with a virtual safety car while the marshals intervened at the scene of the incident. However, because of the position where he ended up, Russell panicked.
Red flag, red flag, red flag.
Despite the scare, the British driver was able to get out of the car without any injuries. Oliver Mann experienced one of the hardest crashes of his life during the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix. During the race at the Suzuka circuit, when reaching one of the fastest corners on the track, the British driver came across a car that was going up to 50 km/h slower. With no time to react, he was forced to go onto the grass to avoid contact, but then it happened.
That's what's happening. Oh, this is where Oliver Burman had his incident. And look, a really hard hit, a very, very strong impact.
The single-seater crossed the gravel and ended up crashing into the barriers at extremely high speed in an extremely violent impact that caused a deceleration close to 50 Gs. Due to the magnitude of the accident, the race was neutralized while the marshals secured the area. And despite the violence of the crash, Burman managed to get out of the car on his own, although with some discomfort in his knee. Esteban Ocon suffered the most violent crash of his career during the 2022 Miami Grand Prix. During free practice 3, the Alpine driver was trying to complete a final fast lap before the end of the session. But in one of the fast sections of the circuit, he lost control of the car and the following happened.
There are yellows in Sector 3 and Esteban Ocon has crashed there.
The Alpine crashed violently into the wall. The impact was brutal and exceeded 50 Gs, one of the strongest recorded that season. In addition, the crash happened against a wall that didn't have any Tech Pro barriers, which led to criticism from the team and forced the Fed to install protections in that area before qualifying. The single-seater was completely destroyed after the impact, and the session had to be stopped while the marshals removed the debris. This accident left Ocon quite sore for the rest of the weekend, although he was still able to compete the next day. And although the 50 Gs from the impact were brutal, this is not the strongest one we'll see on this list. Lando Norris experienced the most chilling accident of his life during the 2021 Belgian Grand Prix. At Spa-Francorchamps, during Q3 the rain was pouring down and the track was extremely wet. In fact, Norris had already warned over the radio that the conditions were very tricky, but he still went out to try for his fast lap. And then this happened.
Coming up. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. It's Lando Norris.
The crash was terrifying. The McLaren lost control going through Eau Rouge and Radillon, slid and crashed violently into the barriers. Then it bounced and crossed the track before hitting the wall on the other side again. Due to what happened, qualifying had to be red flagged while the marshals removed the remains of the car. Fortunately, Norris was able to get out of the car after the accident, and after the crash, several drivers asked that qualifying not be restarted in that rain. However, the session resumed after a few minutes. Nico Hülkenberg experienced the most shocking moment of his career at the 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. On the Yas Marina circuit, during the first lap, he was fighting to gain positions and tried to overtake Romain Grosjean's Haas on the outside. Then the following happened. Wow!
Attention, Volko! Volko! Serious accident for Hülkenberg! Serious accident for Hülkenberg! Let's see what they decide. Oh, there might be a safety car. Definitely a safety car. Definitely a safety car.
Hülkenberg made contact with Grosjean's front wheel, which caused his Renault to fly sideways, roll over twice, and end up crashing hard into the wall. The moment was chilling. The car ended up upside down, and Hülkenberg was left hanging inside the single-seater by his seatbelts, while small flames appeared at the rear of the car. The marshals had to intervene quickly, turn the single-seater over, and stabilize it so the driver could get out. After several attempts and tense seconds, Hülkenberg finally managed to leave the single-seater without suffering serious injuries, thanks to the halo that protected his head. Valtteri Bottas suffered the most terrifying accident of his career during the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix. At the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit, during Q3, the Mercedes driver was trying to improve his time in the final seconds of the session. On his final attempt, Bottas was pushing to the limit when he lost control of the car coming out of the last corner, and then this happened.
And there is the Mercedes. Well, Valtteri Bottas's Mercedes has gone into the wall.
The Mercedes crashed violently into the barriers. The impact was very strong and left the front of the car completely destroyed. The crash forced the session to be red flagged as marshals cleared the car's remains. Fortunately, Bottas was able to get out of the car on his own after the accident. Lance Stroll suffered the hardest impact of his life during the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. On the Marina Bay Street circuit during Q1, the Aston Martin driver was trying to complete a fast lap to advance to the next round. However, coming out of the last corner of the circuit, Stroll lost control of the car, and this happened.
This is Stroll. He crashed, and now there's a flag. And now there's a flag. Now it's under a red flag. That's the end of the session. It ends with this flag. For now it's yellow, but the red one is coming out.
The Aston Martin crashed violently into the barriers. The impact was so strong that the car bounced and was left completely destroyed, with several parts of the single-seater scattered across the track. Due to the crash, qualifying had to be stopped with a red flag while the marshals cleaned up the debris. The impact left Stroll in quite a bit of pain, and after being evaluated by the doctors, Aston Martin decided to withdraw him from Sunday's Grand Prix as a precaution. Gabriel Bortoleto suffered the hardest crash of his life during his home race, the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix. At the Interlagos circuit during the sprint race, the track was wet and the conditions were tricky for the drivers. On lap 23, Bortoleto was closely chasing Alexander Albon as they approached the first corner, and when he tried to overtake him, the following happened. Tricky for the drivers. The car crashed into the pit wall and was sent flying through the air. Then it slid at high speed across the track before hitting the barriers again next to the crash debris. The impact was brutal and the racetrack fell completely silent. Finally, the car came to a stop in the runoff area, completely destroyed. Luckily, Bortoleto was able to get out of the car on his own, although he was taken to the medical center for checkups before being discharged. On the other hand, the impact was so strong that the team had to rebuild the car, which prevented him from taking part in qualifying. However, this is not the only accident at Interlagos that we will see on this list, nor is it the most chilling. Carlos Sainz experienced the most terrifying moment of his career during the 2015 Russian Grand Prix. At the Sochi circuit during free practice 3, the Toro Rosso driver lost control of his car and this happened. The car first crashed into the wall and then ended up wedged under the safety barriers. The impact was brutal and the scene was terrifying. Also, for several seconds, there was great concern in the Toro Rosso garage, as the team received no response over the radio when they tried to communicate with him, since the car's communication system stopped working. The session had to be red flagged while the marshals worked to get Sainz out of the car. During the stoppage, the driver was removed from the car, taken to the ambulance on a stretcher, and transferred to the hospital for medical checks. Finally, it was confirmed that the Spanish driver was conscious and out of danger. However, although he was unable to take part in Saturday's qualifying, he was authorized to participate in Sunday's race. Max Verstappen suffered the biggest crash of his career during the 2021 British Grand Prix. At Silverstone, during the opening laps, Verstappen was fighting wheel-to-wheel with Lewis Hamilton, his direct rival for the championship that season. Both drivers were pushing to the limit when they reached Copse Corner, and then
Hamilton tries again this time on the inside, and at Copse they touch.
Verstappen is out of the race, and it's a big crash at Copse.
both cars made contact and the Red Bull lost control, so it shot into the barriers at over 250 kilometers per hour. The impact was shocking, and it registered a force close to 51 Gs. The magnitude of this was such that it forced the race to be stopped with a red flag, while the marshals approached the area of the impact. To everyone's relief, Verstappen walked out of the car and was taken to the ambulance, from where he was later transferred to the hospital for medical checkups. Hours later, Max was discharged from the hospital without serious injuries. Lewis Hamilton experienced the most chilling moment of his career during the 2007 European Grand Prix. At the Nürburgring, during Q3, the British driver was trying to secure pole position to help him maintain the lead in the championship. Something truly impressive considering it was his debut season in Formula 1. Hamilton was on a very fast lap and had just set the best first sector. But suddenly something totally unexpected happened. The right front wheel of the McLaren failed, and the car was completely out of control. At over 240 km per hour, the single-seater went straight into the barriers. The impact was chilling, and qualifying was immediately stopped with a red flag, while the doctors rushed to the scene of the accident. Hamilton was dazed inside the car and had to be taken out on a stretcher with a neck brace before being transferred to the medical center for preventive checkups. Fortunately, he did not suffer any serious injuries and was able to take part in Sunday's race. Sergio Perez suffered the most shocking crash of his life during the 2011 Monaco Grand Prix at the Monte Carlo street circuit. During qualifying, the Mexican driver was competing in his debut Formula 1 season with Sauber. In the middle of a flying lap coming out of the tunnel, Perez slightly brushed the wall, lost control of his car, and then the Sauber crashed head-on into the barriers at high speed. The impact was terrifying. After the first hit, the car bounced violently against the barriers, and then crashed sideways into the inside wall of the chicane. Because of this, the session was immediately stopped with a red flag. Perez was stunned in the single-seater and needed doctors' help, who removed him from the car on a stretcher and took him by ambulance to the hospital. Later, medical exams confirmed that he had suffered a concussion and a hematoma on his thigh, so he was unable to participate in the Monaco Grand Prix or the next race in Canada. But before the last spot, if you're enjoying this video, subscribe. Fernando Alonso experienced the most terrifying accident of his career during the 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix. On lap 54, with the track wet, Mark Webber lost control of his Jaguar, and then this happened. Debris flew all over the track, and Alonso, who was approaching at nearly 300 kilometers per hour, had no time to react.
The accident, Alonso, who was approaching at kilometers per react.
He crashed into one of the loose wheels, lost control, and slammed hard into the tire barrier, so the race was stopped with a red flag. The impact was brutal. Alonso had to be taken away on a stretcher and brought to the hospital, although fortunately he was not seriously injured. When the race was stopped, the result was taken from 2 laps before the accident, which allowed Alonso to get on the podium despite not having finished. However, although these were the most brutal crashes that current Formula 1 drivers have suffered, the truth is that they don't even come close to some of the most terrifying ones this sport has seen throughout its history. Cars flying through the air, rollovers at more than 300 kilometers per hour, and crashes so violent they seemed impossible to survive. So watch this video if you want to learn about the most chilling accidents in the history of Formula 1.